Something about Space Harrier I've noticed is the people who like Space Harrier really like Space Harrier. It seems to be one of these games that really endears itself to you. It really captures your your imagination. Really captures your imagination. And I have to imagine that a big reason for that is that it was an arcade game. Space Harrier released in 1985, and it wasn't just any arcade game. It was one of these. It had the joystick and the whole art. You would sit down at it, and the whole arcade cab would move back and forth. You know, pitch and roll and all that. And I have to imagine that, like, if you were a kid in the arcades in 1985, that must have been quite an experience for you. It must have really, really seared itself into your mind. I can speak from my experience. While I really didn't get to, I am way past the heyday of the arcade. In my era, the only arcades, at least here in America, really were Chuck E. Cheese, which, you know, didn't exactly have arcade games like what I'm talking about. Like, I don't think Chuck E. Cheese had Space Harrier lying around. And Dave & Buster's, which was this kind of, if you don't know what Dave & Buster's is, it's this, like, family restaurant arcade hybrid, which I guess that's technically what Chuck E. Cheese is too, but Dave & Buster's was like more of a restaurant and having an arcade kind of tacked onto it. But I don't even know where this was. I would have guessed Dave & Buster's, but I remember playing Hydro Thunder, and this would have been like once. I have one memory of playing Hydro Thunder in an arcade somewhere, and that experience is seared into my mind. There is just something about the arcade experience that can really elevate a game. And now, I'm not saying like, oh, Space Harrier was a bad game that just people thought was cool because, you know, the cabinet rocked back and forth. No, not at all. But there are some games that just, when the perfect hardware is matched with the perfect game, it can really elevate the experience, you know? Like Plants vs. Zombies on the original iPad. I mean, just that was perfection, and I suspect Space Harrier was the same thing. I will admit my experience with Space Harrier until playing this Space Harrier-inspired game, Asura the Striker, was, let's see, I credit fed through the original Space Harrier on an emulator. I thought it was okay. I don't think it quite had the same impact on an emulator as it would have in the arcade. And I suffered through the Space Harrier levels in the Bayonetta games, which, with all due respect to Hideki Kamiya, a game designer who I do respect, the Space Harrier levels in Bayonetta suck. Like, I'm sorry, but they're garbage. They're not good. They make me dizzy. When you have to do the spin to evade thing, the whole camera spins. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I guess Kamiya thought that was a good idea. It wasn't. It genuinely made me nauseous, and I have legitimately put off even thinking about going back to Bayonetta and, like, I don't know, pure platinuming it or something for the thought of having to pure platinum the Space Harrier levels. Anyway, we're not talking about Bayonetta. We're talking about this game, Asura the Striker. So, Asura the Striker is obviously heavily inspired by two of probably the greatest rail shooters ever made, which is Space Harrier and Night Striker. Or, no, I don't think it's Night Strikers. I think it's Night Striker. But heavily inspired by both of those. The visuals and kind of like the weird dreamlike kind of landscapes we've got going here are definitely the Space Harrier side of things. The shield and a lot of the gameplay is straight from Night Striker. And the thing is, this is one of those gaming genres that has a terrible name, the rail shooter. I mean, I guess it's vaguely descriptive. You're on rails and you're shooting things. I would say it's more like it's I don't know, 3D shoot 'em up doesn't really even do it justice either. But this style, this Star Fox style, where you are going where the screen is coming at you. Effectively, this genre has been dead for like over a decade. The last gasp this genre had was probably Sin and Punishment Star Successor on the Wii, and I think the genre was basically dead even at that point. I mean, that was the last game. That was the last game Treasure made, right? I think so. But this genre has been dead. If you like rail shooters, you have not been excited about much. Possibly until now. We seem to be in the middle of kind of a mini rail shooter renaissance. There's this game, Asura the Striker. There's the Night Striker sequel, Night Striker Gear. There was also a game that I had no idea existed, honestly, until the developers of this game, Leftover, posted about it on their Twitter, which is, what's it called? Air Twister. Excuse me, Air Twister. I have a mental block for that name for some reason. I don't think it's a great name. It doesn't evoke much. But anyway, and I wondered why I hadn't heard about it, because it's by Yu Suzuki, who Yu Suzuki is the guy who made Space Harrier. And he didn't just make Space Harrier. He made Space Harrier, Outrun, Virtua Fighter, Shenmue, Afterburner. I mean, he's certainly not as well known as like Miyamoto or Miyazaki or Kamiya, but his pedigree is hard to argue with. Well, he came back. Apparently the Shenmue 3 was a complete disaster. I've never cared about Shenmue. I don't. It's never looked interesting to me. But after that, his company made Air Twister. However, I learned why I had never heard about it before. It was an Apple Arcade exclusive. It came out in 2022. It was an Apple Arcade exclusive. And I'm convinced Apple Arcade exclusives are where games go to die. It's like it gets separated. It gets like cut off from the sort of actual enthusiast gamer space when it is an Apple Arcade exclusive. Shantae and the Seven Sirens was an Apple Arcade exclusive too, and although I don't think that game didn't seem like that game was very good anyway. But Air Twister came out in 2022. I suppose if you played games on, it was a mobile game too, but it was a rail shooter. And now the two rail shooters that have sort of carried this torch so far are the new Night Striker Gear and this game, Asura the Striker. I've not tried Night Striker Gear yet, but I really like Asura the Striker. It has problems. And I don't even want to say it's rough around the edges. That feels like such a like critic throwaway line. What I mean when I say it's rough around the edges is there are just a few things about this game that keep me from wanting to completely love it. Although I do really like it, and I think I'm being so picky because I like the game so much. But the sort of headlining feature of this game, the addition that this game makes to the Space Harrier formula, is what the game calls the Shining Knuckle. It's a melee attack, basically. It's effectively a parry, although it's well implemented. I don't know if you have parry fatigue like I do, but it is effectively a parry. And when it works correctly, it feels really good. But it often does not work correctly. And I'm just going to jump in here and say another not great, another miss that this game has are these levels. In every run, you will get one of these bonus levels, and visually, very cool. But they're way too easy. They're a loading screen. If they were more difficult, they like test your movement, but movement in this game is easy. What it really should be testing you on is the melee attack, the Shining Knuckle. That's what these bonus stages should be testing you on. But basically, I think I didn't perfect the bonus stage like the first couple times I played this game, but I've been grinding this 1cc for a while now, and I cannot remember the last time I did not perfect the bonus stage. So it's way too easy. But the Shining Knuckle, it allows you to cancel bullets technically, although that's very difficult, and I usually just don't do it. But the big, like the really fun part about the Shining Knuckle is the boss fights. And I would say the boss fights are absolutely the highlight of this game. The stages, I don't want to say the stages are weak, but you're kind of seeing it right now. The stages are very like segmented. Or at least a lot of them are. A few of the later stages turn up the intensity a bit. But like this stage, it's like a wave of enemies come, pause, dodge these things, pause, another wave of enemies come, dodge. Very little overlapping. So if you memorize the stages, like this game's very memorization heavy, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Also, you just saw one of the major problems with the Shining Knuckle, which is hit detection. And I don't think there's even anything wrong, like there's nothing wrong with the mechanic itself. It's that it's difficult to tell why you're doing it wrong. Like, I can't tell, oh, did I hit it too early? Sometimes, like, you will parry those things, those, like, black ball things that are coming at you. You will parry them. You will get the hit connection feedback. Like, it'll do the little slowdown thing, like, oh, you've hit it correctly, and then you will still get hit. So it's like you get the hit, but you don't get the invincibility frames from it, or it only gives you the invincibility frames for like the one bullet in the front or something. And I'm sounding vague about it because that's the biggest problem with the Shining Knuckle, is it's vague. It's not clear what can be parried, what should be parried. Like right there. So you saw that those balls just sort of disappeared, but I didn't get hit, but also I didn't get the slowdown like I correctly parried them. That's definitely a bug. There's just, again, it's just something off with the hit detection. They need to, and this is like a such a, well, it's a minor thing, but kind of a major thing. Minor in that I think it could be easily fixed. I think there's some, just part of the code that just needs to be tightened up just a little bit. Some, if else statement that hasn't been correctly figured out. It could be such an easy fix, but it's just, I take enough hits from the shining knuckle not working, at least seemingly the way it's supposed to. Like, it could be, maybe it's working the way the devs intend, but sometimes it just doesn't feel good. Like, especially in arcade games, I should know exactly what I'm doing wrong. I think that's a really important part. Like right here, it's working perfectly. This is like, that feels so good right there. It just doesn't always work like that. But I have to say, that is really the only, that is the only major complaint I have about this game. This game is made by a 2-man Japanese indie development team. It's definitely one of these 2 guys and the Unity engine. Unity engine gets a lot of flack, and I'm willing to give the Unity engine a lot of flack, but it does allow for things like this. 2 guys can just get together and say, hey, we're going to make a Space Harrier game, and you can just make a Space Harrier game. Fully 3D assets. And I will say, so if you're not aware, the original Space Harrier was not 3D. It was sprites being it was all 2D sprites, and they would just get bigger and smaller to indicate that they were closer or farther away from you. And I'm sure this is something you would just intuit once you played the game enough in the arcade, but it does make it really difficult to tell, like, when is the bullet big enough to the point where it's actually going to hit you. It's hard to tell in Space Harrier, if you're unfamiliar with it, how close things are to you. Or specifically, when does the game decide, oh, that's close enough, now you're going to take a hit. Probably the best thing that ever happened to rail shooters were 3D graphics. This is one of those genres that can be done in 2 dimensions, but heavily benefits from being done in 3 dimensions. And I think this game looks great. There's a few rough spots. There's a few stages with some like weird background rendering issues, but the game looks great. Asura's character design is great. I love this end stage and the beginning stage where it's this like clear blue sky, you're on the ocean. Probably my favorite detail is when she is close enough to the ground, she will actually run on it. And it looks so cool. I remember seeing a GIF of the first stage on Twitter, and it's just that visual made me immediately think, oh man, I gotta get this game. That looks so cool. And it just doesn't feel like we often have that sort of that like what do I want to say? That visual that sort of evokes just a good feeling in you, really. Like it just, man, that looks cool. Like it's not about, oh, look how many pixels or how high fidelity all the textures are, or look at the condensation on the glass bottle. It's like I don't care about any of those kind of visuals. I care about these kind of visuals. like visuals that look cool, that evoke a sense of like wonder and adventure in me. I mean, that's the kind of visuals I want from a video game. And on that level, Asura the Striker looks great. You know, I'm definitely not one of those people, you know, yeah, you can tell, you know, probably some of these assets are, I don't know, I'm sure some of these are Unity Store assets, you know, all the rocks in this stage look exactly the same. I don't care. It doesn't matter. The game looks great. You know, you don't, and especially you're not noticing any of that when you're having to focus this hard. There's another instance of the Shining Knuckle working perfectly. You can quick kill those bosses. I've actually once, you can get the bosses in particular to line up, and you can quick kill both of them at the same time. I've done that once. It seems inconsistent or hard to do, but it feels really good when you do it. And that is like learning a boss and then effectively quick killing it with the Shining Knuckle is, I think, the peak of this game. It feels so good. But another example of sort of the problem with the Shining Knuckle is coming up right here, actually. Like, you would think, you know, the boss is shooting its fist at you. You would think you could punch his fist back at him. And maybe I'm just bad, but I have tried over and over and over to punch that fist, and it just doesn't work. You know, I just maybe my timing's bad, but I don't think that in particular is able to be parried with the Shining Knuckle. And what can and can't be parried with the Shining Knuckle needs to be obvious. And if you've played this game, I have not addressed. There is a. I think of it as a training wheels mode. You can turn on a thing, a setting right when you press start. It asks you. I think they call it impact flash mode. They ask you if you want to turn on impact flash mode. You can. I think it's a training wheels mode. It effectively trivializes the game. The screen flashes and the game goes into slow motion whenever you can punch something. And I suppose it could be used to like brute force memorize everything and then turn it off and do a real run. But it's not like, that's not real gameplay. Like I said, it's just training wheels. Real good feedback should be baked into the game. It shouldn't be this like optional kind of crutch that you can turn on and off. I think that's just bad design. So this is the final stage. This is stage Omega. No matter what stage path you take, if you beat the final stage of your path without gaming over, without getting a game over, you will play this final stage Omega. And what is kind of special about this stage is this game has a practice mode, but this stage in particular cannot be practiced. This stage is not accessible in practice mode. So if you want to practice this stage, you just have to grind out full stage runs. I'm not entirely sure what I think about that. I kind of like the sort of enforcing that arcade spirit, like, no, you just have to grind it out. But I did find it a little annoying, especially since this stage is fairly memorization heavy, especially this second half. You just have to know, like, at that point, when he comes in for the punch, you just have to be up in the upper right corner. You have to use your Lightning Overdrive, which I haven't even mentioned yet, to dodge those. And then I get hit there. But upper left corner, it just dodges that completely. Like, it's very memo heavy. So not being able to practice it is kind of really annoying. But overall, I think it's a really good final stage, and that's good because it's the stage you will always be playing no matter what stage route you take. But I'm now realizing that I'm at the end of my run here. I was thinking, am I going to have enough to talk about for 30 minutes? But it seems like that has not been a problem. So Asura the Striker, I have some complaints about it. The Shining Knuckle needs a tiny bit of polish, but I wouldn't have made this video. I would not have grinded out a 1cc if I didn't really like this game, and I do really like this game. Definitely go pick it up on Steam. Support indie devs making actually good games like this. Yeah, I have nothing else to say.